Abandoned by my parents at age 12. How I faced neglect and rebuilt my entire life. The parking lot was empty, cold, and filled with that burning asphalt smell that gave me chills. I was 12 years old, alone and shivering, my heavy backpack thrown to the side. My sister Bianca had been taken to the hotel, and my parents, Silvia and Rogerio, had simply disappeared, saying they needed to fix something quickly. I knew something was wrong, but fear rendered me immobile. My heart was beating so fast it felt like it was about to burst from my chest, and I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. In that instant, I realized there was no safe place for me, that the protection I expected from my family was just an illusion. Every passing car felt like a threat, and every shadow reminded me that I had no one. I remembered all the times I'd asked for help and been ignored, the unrelenting scoldings for every little thing, the cold words that cut more than slaps. I wanted to scream, but my voice died in my throat. I took a deep breath, trying to convince myself that I would survive, even without knowing how. It was at that moment that I realized, painfully, that my life would change forever, and that I would need to find strength within myself, because no one else would come and save me. My name is Tiago. I'm currently 17 years old, and I grew up learning early that family doesn't always mean caring. For a long time, I thought my place was to obey and remain silent, because any show of weakness was punished with contempt or silent rage. Silvia always cared more about her image than our well-being, and Rogerio remained silent, as if my pain were an inconvenience. A childhood that many consider happy for me was marked by tension, fear, and a loneliness that followed me into every corner of the house. Before the abandonment in the parking lot, I already felt invisible within the house, that my opinions, feelings, and even my presence were worthless. I learned to hide so as not to provoke my mother's outbursts and to become almost transparent to escape constant judgment. Life seemed like a game of unstable balance, where any misstep could be emotionally fatal. Even so, I clung to my sister Bianca like a beacon of light, trying to protect what little I could, while I felt more and more the sensation that the world I knew was crumbling around me, and that night in the parking lot would be just the beginning of what I would have to face to survive. When they picked me up from the parking lot after hours of freezing and trying not to cry, I was taken to a temporary home. Entering that strange place was like walking through an unfamiliar tunnel. Everything was new, from the smell of the air to the texture of the mattress, which felt absurdly soft compared to what I called my bed at home. Donna Lucia and Seu Antonio welcomed me with smiles that seemed sincere, but I couldn't believe something like that existed in the real world. The first few nights were the worst. I woke at every noise, expecting to hear screams or slamming doors, mentally reliving every abandonment, every silent assault. I cried in secret, afraid of being considered weak, but also with a strange relief at finally having someone who wouldn't hurt me. It was on this threshold between distrust and hope that I began to realize that perhaps another way of life existed, away from the constant surveillance and judgment of my parents. But it wasn't easy. Anger boiled inside me. I wanted to scream, to curse, but I couldn't. I needed to learn to trust again, and every gesture of affection felt suspicious. The battle between the fear of attachment and the desire to be cared for became daily, and I realized that surviving emotionally would require more than simple physical protection. I needed to rebuild my own mind and believe in my worth. The first meeting with social services was a shock. My mother, Silvia, started screaming, calling my story a lie, saying I was making it all up to get attention. My father, Rogerio, tried to calm the situation, but his words were hollow, full of excuses about differences in upbringing. I had never felt so small, and at the same time, so angry. The words cut like blades. I realized that my story, my pain, was being challenged by the very adults who were supposed to protect me. It was at that moment that I understood the full extent of the abuse I was experiencing and how I would have to fight, not just to survive, but to be heard, to exist with dignity. My whole body trembled, my breath became shallow, and the rage made me feel like I might explode. But the verbal abuse forced me to hold back my scream. The memory of that parking lot came back with a vengeance, and I realized I could no longer depend on anyone to validate my pain. I decided, in that moment, that my emotional survival would be my responsibility. I could no longer wait for my parents to change. I needed to find my way alone, even if it was painful and lonely. The struggle that began there, in front of adults who were supposed to care for me, would be the first of many, and a cruel lesson in the fragility of familial love when it's false. In the following months, each visit, each conversation with Helena, my social worker, became a lesson in patience and courage. She didn't spare me from reality, but she showed me that I wasn't to blame for what had happened. Little by little, I began to write down my feelings, to tell my story without fear, recording every detail for myself. At first, I trembled when I remembered the abandonment. My stomach churned, my chest heavy, and I relived every cold look, every cutting word. But little by little, each account became a weapon against the silence that imprisoned me. Donna Lucia and Seu Antonio taught me little things that changed my perception. Dinners without arguments, sincere compliments, clear and consistent rules. It was strange, almost disconcerting, to realize that normality existed, and I began to realize that my feelings were valid, that my anger, my fear, my sadness were legitimate. The transformation didn't happen overnight. There were mistakes, relapses, moments when I wanted to give up, feel sorry for myself, or believe nothing would change. But every step, every small advance showed me that I could rebuild my life, that I was not condemned to repeat the cycle of pain I had known. Even with the welcome, the fear didn't disappear. It lived within me, like a silent shadow. Any loud noise made me shiver. Any raised voice made my body react as if I were back in that house. Sleeping was difficult. Sometimes I woke up sweating, thinking my mother was in the room, ready to accuse me of something that didn't even exist. The trauma was physical. My chest tightened, my stomach ached, and I felt an emptiness that couldn't be filled. Bianca was still with them at the time, and it gnawed at me. The guilt was constant. I thought I should have done something, that perhaps I had been too weak, that if I had just held on a little longer, she wouldn't be alone. Helena said it wasn't my fault, but listening and believing were two very different things. I felt like I was learning to walk again, but unsure of where to put my feet. Donna Lucia always said that patience is a kind of love, and I tried to believe it. Even on days when despair returned, I remembered her calm gaze, as if to say, "You don't need to be afraid to exist." That phrase stayed with me, and it was the first brick in my reconstruction. The change began slowly. One day, Seu Antonio invited me to help him fix a fence behind his house. It was a simple job, but the gesture left a lasting impression on me. He treated me like someone capable, not a broken child. As we worked, he told me stories from his youth, spoke of losses, regrets, and how he learned that some pains only stop hurting when we give them meaning. I listened silently, but it moved me, for the first. And time, I realized that being a man didn't mean repressing feelings, and that showing fragility wasn't shameful. When we finished, he looked at me and said, "You did a good job, Tiago." Those 5 words, which might seem simple to anyone, felt like a hug to me. I hadn't heard anything like it in years. That night I slept better. It was the first time my body relaxed without guilt. I realized that perhaps it was possible to rebuild a new idea of family, even if I still couldn't call it home out loud. Sometime later, I received news that messed everything up again. Bianca had run away. I ran to the bathroom and vomited when I heard. The image of her alone, scared, with nowhere to go, tore me apart. Helena assured me they would do everything to find her, and I trusted her, but the weight was unbearable. With each hour, my heart seemed to shrink. I felt helpless, small again, trapped in that cycle of fear. Days felt like months, until finally she was found. Thin, haggard, but alive. When I learned she would be welcomed by the same family that had taken me in, I cried uncontrollably. I cried for relief, for love, for everything I hadn't been able to tell her before. When Bianca arrived, she seemed like a different person. She was ashamed, guilty, afraid. I hugged her, and for the first time, I felt that embrace had weight, truth. Neither of us needed to say anything. The pain was shared, but so was the desire to start over. It was at that moment that I realized that starting over isn't about forgetting the past. It's about learning not to let it define what comes next. The following days were intense. Bianca cried almost every night, and I did my best to be there. Sometimes I just sat beside her and we remained in silence, because no words could convey what we had experienced. Donna Lucia, in her calm way, said that silence is also a form of healing. She made coffee, brought blankets, made small gestures that, together, began to rebuild what our parents had destroyed. Rogerio tried to contact us, but the courts were already involved. Sylvia, on the other hand, completely lost control. She was even taken to a hearing and screamed so loudly that the room had to be evacuated. I watched from afar, protected, and for the first time I felt that justice existed even if delayed. Helena explained that the process would be long, but that we were now safe. That word, safe, sounded strange. I had never associated my life with that feeling, and it was there, in that moment, that I understood. Security is not the absence of fear, it is knowing that there is someone willing to protect you when it appears. Over time, I went back to school. School was a minefield of memories, but also of new possibilities. My advisor, Marcia, was the one who most encouraged me to participate in activities, to not hide. At first, I thought she was just doing her job, but then I realized she truly cared. When I entered a science fair and won first place, she hugged me like she was my own mother. I froze for a second, then hugged her back. I felt my heart beat differently. It was life. It was something good, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Feeling joy again scared me more than any sadness. It felt wrong to be happy after everything. But over time, I learned that happiness isn't a betrayal of pain. It's its result. And it was at that point that I began to see myself no longer as a victim, but as someone who survived. I was proof that love, when it finally arrives, can rebuild even what seemed irreversible. Even with all this, it wasn't easy. I still woke up in the middle of the night feeling abandoned, reliving every detail of that parking lot as if it were yesterday. My body reacted before my mind. Sweaty palms, racing heartbeat, a chill running down my spine. Sometimes I wondered if I would ever be able to shake off this weight. But then I looked at Bianca and saw the reflection of my own pain in her eyes. I knew I couldn't give up, that she needed me as much as I needed her. Little by little, we rebuilt a routine, waking up at the same time, making coffee together, helping with the housework, studying. Every simple act was a building block in the reconstruction of our lives. But there were moments of explosion, silly arguments, tears that fell for no apparent reason, nights that seemed endless. I felt angry at my parents, angry at the world, angry at myself. But I also learned that anger isn't weakness. It's a sign that something inside you wants to change. It was during this period that I began to write my memories, my feelings, my doubts. Writing down everything I couldn't say out loud helped me organize my thoughts and make sense of the chaos. I discovered that talking, writing, and sharing didn't make me vulnerable. It made me stronger. The first time my mother tried to contact me after foster care, I felt a mixture of anger and fear. She sent messages saying I was being influenced by adults, that I was lying about everything. My body trembled, and for a second I felt like erasing my entire new life and returning to my old routine just to avoid the emotional confrontation. But I took a deep breath and responded calmly, not to please her, but to set boundaries. I realized I had finally learned something that had previously seemed impossible. Emotional distance is protection. I no longer needed to prove anything to someone who had never valued me. At the same time, my sister watched every move, and I knew I needed to be an example. That's when I realized that rebuilding our life also meant teaching Bianca to trust and fight for herself. This responsibility frightened me, but it also gave me focus. Every decision we made now carried weight, but it was no longer fear. It was choice. The sense of control over our own lives was unprecedented and liberating, even though each step was carefully measured. One of the most memorable moments was when Bianca, finally confident, spoke about everything she'd been through. She revealed details I hadn't known, exposed wounds I hadn't even known existed. Hearing that hurt more than any abandonment or abuse I'd ever felt. But it also brought relief. We were finally being heard. The truth finally had a place to exist. We cried together, hugged each other, and I felt a huge weight lift from my chest. The strength she demonstrated, despite everything, inspired me. For the first time, I felt we were no longer alone in the world, that there were adults who truly cared, and that we had the right to exist without fear. This was a turning point. We realized that our pain didn't have to define us, and that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act even when it's present. Over the next few years, I began to notice small internal changes. I could sleep without waking up in a panic. I could concentrate on my studies. I could smile without guilt. Small steps, but significant victories. I discovered hobbies that made me feel good. I made true friendships. And for the first time, I felt that my worth didn't depend on the approval of those who had hurt me. The relationships I built were based on respect, trust, and empathy. Each day was an opportunity to reinforce the new identity I was creating. Tiago, the survivor, who learned to fight without violence, to express himself without fear, to love without conditions. Social services, Helena, Donna Lucia, and Seu Antonio were essential, but I also realized that the greatest transformation came from within. The strength I believed didn't exist became visible in my daily choices and actions. The rebuilding process wasn't linear. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, deep sadness, and feelings of injustice. Many times I thought I might never be able to shake the memories of abandonment or constant fear, but each time I overcame one of these crises, I felt proof that it was possible. I learned that overcoming pain isn't the absence of pain, but the ability to move forward despite it. Today, looking back, I can recognize that all the challenges shaped me, taught me resilience and empathy. I feel more prepared to face the world and protect my sister, and even though some scars remain, they no longer define who I am. We are much more than what we were led to believe about ourselves. Even with all the rebuilding, the past still haunted me at unexpected moments. Sometimes I was alone in my room, and a memory of the abandonment in the parking lot would hit me, like a blow to the chest, making my heart race and my hands tremble. At other times, I'd look at Bianca and feel an overwhelming responsibility, as if I were the only one capable of preventing the world from hurting her again. I learned that traumas don't disappear simply because we're in a safe place. They require attention, patience, and the courage to face each memory without drowning in them. It was during this period that I realized the importance of talking about my feelings and not repressing them. Writing became a way to organize myself, to vent, and also to create a record of my strength. Each completed page was silent proof that I was surviving, learning to cope with pain and transform fear into fuel to move forward. The support of Helena, Donna Lucia, and Seu Antonio was crucial, but the real work happened within me. I discovered that my body and mind needed to relearn how to trust, how to feel, how to live. It wasn't just an external rebuilding, but a constant internal battle, where each small victory became a milestone. I realized that resilience isn't about being strong all the time, but about keeping going even when everything inside tells you to give up. School became a place of challenges and opportunities. At first, I avoided any interaction, afraid someone would discover my past and judge me. But with the encouragement of Marcia and some teachers, I began to participate more, getting involved in projects and activities. My first big moment was when I organized a science presentation, something I would never have dared to do before. Success lay not only in the result, but in the sense of belonging it brought. For the first time, I felt my effort was recognized by people who had no interest in controlling or punishing me. Every compliment, every genuine smile helped fill the voids left by years of neglect. I began to realize that I deserved to occupy a place, that my voice had value, and that my story could serve as a learning experience and inspiration for others going through similar situations. My confidence grew slowly, but it became solid, a foundation for all the changes to come. One of the biggest challenges was dealing with anger and resentment toward my parents. For a long time, I felt like part of my energy was trapped in them, in their mistakes and neglect. But I realized that carrying this anger only held me back. I began writing letters I never sent, expressing everything I wanted to say to Silvia and Rogerio. This exercise helped me externalize my feelings, to see my pain without being consumed by it. I discovered that I didn't need to forgive immediately, but I did need to free up space within myself to grow. Anger transformed into motivation. It drove me to study, to care for Bianca, to plan a different future. Little by little, I realized that my life wouldn't be defined by what they did, but by what I would make of my own choices. Each step toward emotional freedom was accompanied by small rituals. Walk, a piece of writing, a conversation with someone I trusted. All of this helped me solidify the idea that I could exist without fear, and that my happiness didn't depend on the approval of those who rejected me. The welcome and love I found taught me lessons my parents never gave me. Donna Lucia and Seu Antonio showed me that care isn't a negotiation, that boundaries and discipline can coexist with affection, and that mistakes can be learning opportunities, not a source of shame. Little by little, these experiences redefined my notion of family. I learned that blood ties don't guarantee love, and that true care comes from those who choose to protect and value you. Each peaceful dinner, each conversation without shouting or threats, each gesture of attention rebuilt my self-esteem and confidence. The feeling of security, though new and sometimes fragile, became a constant in our lives. I began to realize that we deserved to live without fear, that we deserved to be happy, and that we had the capacity to build something better, even after so much suffering. The bond with Bianca strengthened in a surprising way. Now we were allies, accomplices in rebuilding our lives. When something scared or bothered us, we talked, shared fears and strategies without judgment. I became not only a brother, but also a protector and a friend. I learned that strength isn't just about bearing pain alone, but also sharing responsibilities and supporting those we love. This partnership gave us the courage to face challenges and believe in a future that previously seemed impossible. The feeling of no longer being alone was liberating, and it taught me that rebuilding isn't just individual, but also collective. Together, we had a better chance of overcoming the past and building a secure present. As time passed, I began to realize that life gives us small rewards when we fight not to give up. Each achievement, however small, was a victory over the past. I was able to participate in school events, make true friends, and even get involved in volunteer projects, helping children who in some way reminded me of my own story. The feeling of being able to help someone, of offering support and affection, brought a joy I'd never known. It was different from simply existing. It was contributing, positively influencing, and transforming pain into learning. With each smile I brought to another child, I remembered myself in the parking lot, alone and scared, and I felt that all that pain could have a purpose, that my experience could serve to give hope to others. It was through this process that I understood that overcoming doesn't mean forgetting, but using pain as fuel to grow and create a better future. I still face moments of insecurity. Some memories surface without warning. A word or gesture triggers painful memories that I try to hide even from myself. But now I have tools to deal with it. I write, talk, share, and seek support. I've learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, and that asking for help is an act of courage. Most importantly, even when the pain hits hard, I know I'm not alone. Bianca and I have built a bond that goes beyond blood. It's a bond of trust, care, and true love. Our guardians taught us that true family is one that chooses to be by your side, that offers protection, affection, and understanding, and that even after years of abandonment, it's still possible to feel security and affection. One of the greatest lessons I learned from this experience is that resilience isn't something that emerges out of nowhere, but something that is built daily. Every challenge overcome, every fear faced, every tear shed and shared contributes to inner strength. Today, I know that life isn't just about what happens to us, but about how we react and transform our traumas into learning experiences. I allowed myself to feel, to make mistakes, to grow. And even if not everything is completely healed, I learned that it is possible to live fully and dream of a safe, happy, and fear-free future. Looking back and realizing how much I've grown fills me with gratitude. Gratitude for having survived, for having found people who supported me, for having had the courage to face my traumas. What could have been a story of pain and abandonment gradually transformed into one of overcoming, learning, and hope. I discovered that despite the scars, I can be happy, build my own family, and help my sister grow stronger too. The feeling of autonomy and confidence is something I never imagined I'd feel so fully, but today it's part of who I am. If I could leave a message for anyone going through similar situations, I would say, there is light even when everything seems dark. Pain doesn't have to define you, and rebuilding is possible, even if it's slow and difficult. The strength you seek is within you, and asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's possible to live without fear, feel love and security, and create a future you never imagined possible. My life isn't perfect, and it probably never will be, but it's mine. And finally, I can say that despite everything, I survived, learned, and continue to grow. Hope exists, even after abandonment, neglect, and pain.